Welcome to Talk with History. I am your host, Scott, and this week we are revisiting parts of our favorite interviews from the show. We are going to revisit one of our first ever interviews here on Talk with History with a fellow history creator who now has almost 1 million followers, an actor made world famous by the Broadway play Hamilton, and a couple of book authors with some amazing stories to tell. We are chatting with JD from the History Underground YouTube channel.
Yeah, I have an ancestor who was has kind of a neat story. There's a highway, state highway. Oh, it's probably about 30 miles from me, and off on the side of the road, there's a Confederate grave marker.
Okay,
Wow.
And it says, "Here lies the bodies of 3 unknown Confederate soldiers." Well, my great-great-great-grandma buried those men in that grave.
Wow.
And there's actually 2. The grave marker's wrong. There's actually 2 in there instead of 3. But the story is her husband was off to war.
Yeah.
This whole area was filled with a bunch of, Confederate guerrillas and, just bordering on anarchy around here. It's a dangerous place to be. But she overnight would run supplies through the lines because women.
There's a great article about Missouri women running contraband.
Oh, I'll have to check that out.
Yeah, I'll
really?
have to say, I'll have to send it to you, JD. I read it in grad school, so I have it. I had to read it for school.
I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my great-great-great-grandma would have been one of those women. So she was getting like quinine, medicine, food supplies and stuff like that.
Holy cow.
And smuggling them back and forth across the lines. Well, one day she came across these dead Confederate soldiers and knew that if these Confederate guerrillas came and found these dead Confederates, that they would likely come into the town and burn it down or hang some of the men or something like that. And they said she was a short woman, but real strong and, spunky.
Yeah.
And so she buried those men there at that grave.
That's awesome. Did you do a did you do an episode on that?
Not yet. I'm going to.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So was that kind of like that's like the perfect example
Family
of like regional
folklore.
family history, right? That's like super local, super hyper relevant. So was that just kind of like a family story that was kind of just verbally passed down?
Yep. That was one of my grandpa. My grandpa took me out there and showed me whenever I was really young. We were turkey hunting.
Yeah.
And in Missouri, you have to stop hunting at 1:00.
Yeah.
So after 1:00, we got done turkey hunting, and he said, let's run out here and I want to show you something. And I was 5 years old.
Wow.
Whenever he took me out there. And it was really funny. I hadn't been back. My grandpa passed away a couple years ago, but I wanted to show my kids.
Yeah.
And I was able to take them right back to that spot. Like it had that much of an impression.
How cool.
So I hadn't been there in, over 35 years.
Yeah.
But was able to take them back.
Now, Jen, this is our 100th episode. We've been doing this for a couple years now, and we have a very special guest joining us today. So we really have a guest who needs no introduction, but I'm going to give him one anyways. He originated the iconic role of George Washington in the groundbreaking musical phenomenon Hamilton. His powerful vocals and nuanced performance captivated audiences worldwide, and his portrayal of the first president sparked important conversations about history. From there, he only picked up steam, continuing on his career on the silver screen and television, and I'm making his career very, very short. But most importantly, the most important thing about our guest is he has a passion for history. So welcome, Mr. Christopher Jackson. Thank you so much for joining us on Talk with History tonight.
Thank you for having me. Happy 100. So the first 6 years of my life, the real formative years, we spent a lot of time with my grandparents, who were both Black entrepreneurs. They came out of sort of the Booker T. Washington sort of like bootstrap, go to technical school, get a trade. They owned funeral homes, Jackson Funeral Homes, and they were self-made. Doesn't really begin to describe them. They were old enough that the old ways were still very much an everyday thing. So I remember my grandmother making her own washing powder out of lye soap, and our body soap was lye soap. And I used to get to cut the blocks of light soap. Like that was all a part of my life. And then on my mom's side of the family, they were all farmers. And so I grew up, I split half my time with my father's parent, with my father's side, my paternal grandparents, and then with my maternal grandparents. They were very much farmers. They lived in and around and on the land. And so I got that education as well. I mention that because culturally and historically, both of my grandparents placed a great deal of importance on understanding what I was a part of and where I came from. So I was ever aware of the importance of knowing who and how exactly the civil rights movement not only came to be, but was sustained, and how it was changing shape. I remember watching Jesse Jackson at the Democratic, convention. I remember his "I Am Somebody" speech. I was watching it.
Wow.
I remember those moments, and they were codified because my grandparents set me down and explained it to me in real time. I was 4 or 5 years old. You know what I mean? So those kinds of things, like I always had a sense of what was happening in the world, and not only what my place was in it, but what was expected of me.
Yeah.
As a citizen, as a Black man, as someone who was through my life circumstances forced to move between both sides of my family, and it's still in a still very segregated emotionally and mentally part of the country. Yes. And so I learned how to code switch. I learned how to go along to get along. I learned how to push slightly and softly. I learned how to push loudly and not with a lot of nuance. And it was a great benefit to me. So as I moved through my schooling, history made sense.
Sure.
Because I had already received an education, a foundation in that, and taught how important it was. I always took history very seriously.
That's awesome.
Second only to music. That's just how it had that and lunch. But that's how it kind of formed. That's how it kind of formed me. And I've been ever grateful, especially in this Hamilton experience, because I felt I was primed already to understand the context of it and to really play it with commitment.
It's perfect. It's the two things you love. Now, your paternal grandparents, your African-American grandparents, were they part of the Great Migration? Were their families from the South? So
this is the funny story that I meant to tell you. I promise I'll give you the shorter answer than the last two. So my wife and I get on ancestry.com the other day. I have avoided it. My last name, there's not a lot of touch points that are positive. But it turns out that we're in the same bloodline as old Andy, which is crazy to me. He and his wife didn't have kids, but his parents are in my family's bloodline. It's crazy.
Holy cow.
You got to come to Tennessee then. That means you got to come to the Hermitage.
But they go back even further, because John Jackson, who was a captain back in the colonies, was a member of the Prince Philip's War, who was also, that whole anti-Native American thing runs all the way. There's 2 genocidal maniacs in my family tree. And I'm like, yo, this is nuts.
We are talking to author Mickey Nguyen. He's actually the son of Lieutenant Colonel Nguyen Van Ba. His father was a South Vietnamese pilot who escaped Vietnam with his family when the country was falling to the communists that were coming down from the north. His father's heroic actions, including a daring helicopter escape in April of 1975, was featured in the 2015 Oscar-nominated film Last Days in Vietnam, and are chronicled in the new memoir, which we're going to talk about, The Last Flight Out.
Let's tell the story of from your 6.5, what's happening in Vietnam at the time. Your father is a South Vietnamese officer. He's a pilot. Vietnam is falling. What's going on with South Vietnamese people? And tell us the story of your family's survival.
So I'll try to condense it as much as possible. But there are fun parts in there that it's there's just some interesting parts in there. But for those that may not know the full history of Vietnam, it was a country highly desired in terms of where its location, close to the water, been occupied by China, French occupation for hundreds of years through its history. And most recent, leading up to 1975, was the desire to be independent, the way that independent from the French and other things. But in this particular case, the communists wanted to gain control of the country. And my dad, being from the South, with support from the U.S., was involved, trained with Americans in the early 60s. He had a chance a couple times to come over to Alabama and to Texas for flight training. And what he decided to focus more around helicopters and get training around that. And fast forward to the last few months leading up to April 29, 1975, the communists were coming down and encircling the city of Saigon. And at this moment in time, I was, again, six and a half. So I'm sharing this story from my perspective. But as we talk about the book itself, he wrote many of these stories himself. And but the way that I'll narrate is from my perspective. But knowing that the communist was about to come down, he knew that it was time to start making option A or option B and perhaps option C if things didn't turn out well. But as we all know, the communists did come down. And the last few nights, my family, my mom and I, younger brother, younger sister, had to go to our grandma's house, which is basically in the middle of Saigon.
Okay.
And he told us to go there. And he told us that in the event of things just falling apart, I'm going to come and get you somehow, some way. We'll figure out this out. We'll figure out option B. Because if he would have gotten caught or captured, it would have been many years of re-education camp, which is hell.
Sure.
His buddies and family members who didn't get the chance to leave had to deal with just that constant of activity. But in knowing what he knew, hearing intelligence in the radio and his superiors and his commanding officers and everybody else simply knowing that there is no other option, they took off with their family. He waited for orders until the very last moment, where at this time there was no further orders for him to execute this or execute that, because again, his superiors took off themselves.
Yeah, everybody was trying to save their families.
Exactly. And so at this point, he had what he called his horse, right? His Chinook. There's the only thing that he can ride in and out of. They bombed the main airport, Tangsanyak Airport.
Okay.
And so you couldn't take a big plane en route. So he flew the Chinook helicopter into the city towards my grandma's house. And mind you, this was like, any metropolitan major city. And just land, jet Chinooks, right? The CH-47 is loud, thunderous. You can hear that from miles away.
Oh, yeah.
And it causes a commotion. But the net here is he landed that thing in front of my grandma's playfield, little schoolyard or a playfield in the front. And obviously caused a lot of commotion in the neighborhood. And many of the homes back then had tin roofs and blew many of those things up in a way. But told his co-pilot lower the back hatch, and we all ran in and to the back of the Chinook and took that thing up quickly. There were folks that were military police around there rushing towards him, and so we had to get the heck out of there.
Sure. So let me ask you this. So you went to your grandma's house, I would assume because of the protection, as it's more central to the city, it's going to take longer for the North Vietnamese to get into the center of the city. So he's like, get there for protection. Plus he has the LZ there. So he has a landing zone picked out because of the playground. Now, were you the only family to get on board? I mean, did other families see this and want to try to save themselves too?
Yeah, my dad's side has a lot of oldest son in the family. He had a lot of brothers, my aunts and uncles. But as we were running into the Chinook, my mom would look back, hey, come on with us. But they said,
people
no,
were still unsure.
Go with your husband.
Okay.
From that standpoint. And the reason why we were at my grandma's house was because we were living in Bien Hoa, which was about half hour away, a military base. Sure. And obviously the military base was probably too hot of a zone to be there. So that's why he moved to our family, to grandma.
So it's just immediate family. No uncles or aunts came. Your grandmother didn't come. No cousins. It was just you guys. Okay.
Yeah, no. Many of them. Back then, who was to say where my dad would go and how it would end up? And
sure.
So,
Nobody knew what was happening.
Yeah.
So
perhaps some regret here and there from the family members not going, but eventually some of them had the chance to leave. Yeah. So basically, got out of Saigon, got out of that area, and headed further south just to get away from the city and to consolidate with his other pilots.
Sure.
Trying to figure out the next thing. And the thought was to get food, gas, just gear up and try to find a remote island further south, just lay low and then figure out from there. And that's what we did. That's what my dad did, was just met up with, radioed the other pilots, and met at a location and to figure out what the next thing to do was. But he heard on the radio a lot of U.S. communication chatter. He also knew many of the U.S. ships that were still out in the Pacific there. And the thought was maybe go out there and check it out. And if there's a ship that was big enough, maybe to land on it and get out of town, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what he did. He flew out towards the ocean. There was not an exact point. He just flew out there to check it out. And mind you, Jen, you probably know they don't have flotation devices or any life jackets, at least with this Chinook that my dad had. And so it was a risky effort to go out there not knowing exactly what's going to be out there, and if maybe he had enough gas to make it out or to figure all that out. But eventually flew out there, and on the distance he saw a ship and headed in that direction. And as he got close to it, he eventually, throttled back a little bit. Didn't want to look too aggressive.
Sure.
Obviously, because the American Navy men below, everybody was heightened tension, right? Not knowing if this was a communist, plane coming out and doing wrong to the ship. As he approached it, my mom, him, and others, and there was like about 15, 16 people somewhere in the Chinook, our family, and he had a co-pilot and his gunner and maintenance guy and their girlfriends and things like that. Hovered up there, and we can see the ship below continuing to maintain its course, right? Just 3 or 5 knots. And he kept hovering it and circling around it, while at the same time that you can see the folks below holding big guns up at him, just to like, hey, we got our eye on you. And
like a warning.
Yeah, just exactly. And my dad, with his broken English that he can speak, was able to communicate with the captain in the ship. And finally, Captain Paul Jacobs talked with his crew and started to figure out how are we going to do this? How are we going to help this guy and the folks in the Chinook? And so in the video, there's a video in the film where you can see my mom holding up Mina, my baby sister, 6-month-old, up to the window and say, hey, there's women and kids on board here. We need help. And so with the compassion and the heart of the Mr. Paul Jacobs, quickly just scrambling to figure things out, and finally, okay, guys, we got to help the pilot up there in the Chinook up there. And so basically what my dad did was, and again, the ship had to maintain a steady course, right? Mm-hmm. Maintain a steady course, and so he hovered the Chinook towards the stern, the rear side, and obviously this particular USS Kirk, found out later on, was a submarine, a destroyer type, where it was looking for sonar and just a lot of expensive equipment, very high tech back then, antennas, radars, all of the surveillance. And so my dad didn't want to get too close to all the mass and the equipment, because it can put that ship out of commission quickly. Anything could have happened. A wind or a swell could have knocked the Chinook into the boat. And so he hovered behind, falling behind. He hovered the Chinook behind the ship, and on the starboard door, opened the door, and hovered it, lowered it down, and we can see, hovered it about 10, 13 feet above the deck, and we can see the American Navy men below, hands up, and jump. Right,
Wow.
one by one we jump.
Holy cow.
Yeah, and the last few that left the Chinook, my mom had to drop a 7-month-old baby onto the hand below. That gentleman who caught my sister, his name is Mr. Chipman. Met him in Washington,
wow.
D.C. Yeah, Texan.
That's amazing.
And just amazing reunion. But Mr. Chipman and others down there, brave Navy men, risked their life as well just to help us out. And so we all got down. I jumped down, and the only injury was one of the girlfriends of one of the crew member just sprained her ankle. But fortunately, everyone was okay. They quickly pushed us inside. You didn't want any kids or anybody running out on the deck, right?
Sure.
And so the last thing I see of my dad as I turned around was him hovering away from the ship. And went inside, and that was it. From my own eyes, that was the last time I saw my dad. Everything else was just hearing stories of him telling it, and eventually seeing all of the photos and everything else from the U.S. Navy many years later. But as I share this with you through what my dad shared with me through dinner tables as we grew up, he hovered away from the ship 100 yards or so, and hovered the Chinook on the water so he can take off all of his gear and his gun, his sidearm, and the flak jacket, right? I mean, it's hard to put that on, let alone take it off while he's hovering.
Get weight off, yeah.
Yeah. Shoes, boots, unstrapping all that. His only regret in this whole experience was, and the only reason why I found out was because of the book, the section that he wrote. But the regret was that he should have asked his co-pilot to at least hold the rudder so that he can take all of his stuff out. Once he's down, then tell the co-pilot to jump, right?
Yeah.
So he laughingly said, next time if I have to do this again, I'm going to tell the co-pilot to just give me like 5 minutes. And also the other regret was not keeping his military ID.
Yeah.
All of the ID stuff. Everything was gone. I'm telling you. He started in this new world with absolutely nothing, a pair of shirt and boxer shorts.
That's amazing.
So down to his undergarment, and hovered there, kicked the port door in the left side out.
Yep.
And basically with his right leg pushed the rudder so that it would lean towards the right as he jumped over to his left into the water.
Yeah.
And he said the stories around the dinner table, tried to dive into the ocean, but tried it 2 or 3 times, but the salt water is very buoyant. It kept pushing him back up. That was his biggest fear, was a shrapnel or a blade or something just in the water, right? Or the dynamics of the Chinook could have flipped back on him.
Sure.
Right? Because you can't really jump too far if just from this huge aircraft. But fortunately, it leaned over to the right. He was on the left, and quickly on the third attempt diving, he dove down, and finally, as I said in the film, he pops back up, and he's alive. And it's like just a huge relief. They sent the little skiff to come out and grab him, and we can see the video of him sitting in the boat, just like probably thinking, "God, thank God Almighty, I made it." And the first thing he said when he got on the ship, he wasn't like, "Where's my wife and kids?" He's like, "Give me a cigarette."
Oh my gosh, that's
calm
awesome.
that nerve down.
Absolutely.
That's so funny. That's so 70s.
I can't imagine how. Yeah.
So exactly.
It's such a pilot thing. It's awesome.
Oh my gosh. We are doing an interview with author Robert O'Connor. He's the author of Jeep Show, a novel, A Trooper at the Battle of the Bulge. This is a fascinating book. I think you guys are really going to enjoy this topic. 30-year-old dance instructor Jim Tanzer enlists in the Army in 1943. He gets assigned to the Morale Corps because of his show business background. He's classified as MOS 442, entertainment specialist. This is a true, real MOS that was used in World War II and something that I learned about during our interview. Private Jim Tanzer is shipped to the European Theater of Operations and assigned to Jeep shows. 3 enlisted entertainers are driven to the front lines where they put on small variety shows. Private Mickey Rooney leads Jim's squad.
The Jeep show, the concept was developed by a captain in the what I call the Morale Corps. It was actually called Special Services during the war. It had been called the Morale Corps until 1942, and they called it Special Services. But the Broadway director, Captain Joshua Logan, who directed South Pacific and many other famous Broadway shows,
Oh, how cool.
realized the Army had moved very quickly from France, the Normandy area of France, the hedgerows, which were a bit of a problem. The whole Morale Corps, Mickey Rooney and Jim Hetzer, had come over as part of a big GI show called Hip Hooray with a band. And what they were expecting is they were going to take this show around England and then France. And it was pretty good duty.
Yeah.
But Captain Joshua Logan disbanded the show and organized them into Jeep show units, 3 entertainers. So first of all, I was surprised that they didn't know the duty that they were going to be doing when they came over. Although you both are veterans, you know what that's like, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, you show up expecting to do one job and you end up doing something completely different.
You do it
exactly, and they never tell you why.
That's right. We just need you to do it. Go and do it. Okay.
Yeah, they never tell you why. So that was probably the most surprising thing. But then I think, as you know, soldiers and sailors and airmen and you're given this crazy duty to do, and you just do it and you get used to it. So that became their routine, and they would do as many as 10 or 11 shows a day.
Wow.
They would be going up and down the front lines, and as you may or may not know, since you're sailors, is on the front line in World War II, the Army would disperse company-size units in various villages and hamlets and all that. So there'd be, Baker Company would be in one village, and then 10 miles up the road, Charlie Company would be in another. So it's that size unit. So these Morale Corps soldiers, these entertainers, would just be going up and down the border in their Jeep.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So they drive to company, and
exactly.
Their shows would be about an hour, 45 minutes, hour long?
Shows would be about an hour, and then they try to hang out for an hour, for a bit. Obviously, Mickey Rooney would sign autographs.
Yeah.
Sure.
None of the other guys were asked for their autograph.
Yeah.
By the way, Mickey Rooney was, of course, world famous when he was doing this, and I'm full of respect for him because he did not have to go overseas. He could have done his Army service in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
But there were many, many men who were not the least bit famous when they were 442's Morale Corps soldiers, but became famous. You've heard of Mel Brooks, Young Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Sammy Davis Jr. was a famous entertainer and friend of Frank Sinatra's back in the 60s, 50s, and 60s.
No way.
And actually,
that's cool.
You probably know, there's a little trivia, and since I'm not a historian, Jen, I really shouldn't say this, but I will anyways. The Army was segregated in World War II. Well, Sammy Davis Jr. was a black man, of course, and he was on a Jeep show squad with 2 other white soldiers. So Sammy Davis Jr. may have been the first person to integrate the U.S. Army.
What a cool thing
That's
to
my
learn.
theory. I should back that up with some research, but... then Burt Lancaster, Dick Van Dyke,
My gosh.
Red Button. So a lot, it became kind of of course, there were probably dozens and dozens and dozens of entertainers like Jim Tanzer, the protagonist, who were not of that star caliber, but did their job.
Did I miss any guests that were your favorite? Maybe someone we should have back on the show. Reach out to us at our email in the episode show notes, and let's see what we can do. This has been a Walk with History production. Talk with History is created and hosted by me, Scott Benny. Episode researched by Jennifer Benny. Check out the show notes for links and references mentioned in this episode. Talk with History is supported by our fans at thehistoryroadtrip.com. Our eternal thanks go out to those providing funding to help keep us going. Thank you to Doug McLiverty, Larry Myers, Patrick Benny, Gail Cooper, Christy Coates, and Calvin Gifford. Make sure you hit that follow button in that podcast player, and we'll talk to you next time.